Are we live?
Yep, you're good.
Sweet, we're live. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. So this is starting off immediately as we begin. So I'm just going to try and briefly describe what's going on. We have one server out on the internet that all 6 competitors are going to try and hack into. And they've just received the URL for where that is. It's set up such that only they have access, I hope. So I would ask that you guys just watch, don't hack along with them. But let's just see what they do. I hear some echo in here. Does somebody have like a... Is that you?
I turned that.
Oh, okay, perfect. No worries. Okay, so it looks like they're all doing stuff already.
So,
Tyler,
actually,
you want
to... At least see with Shane, he's getting something not found. I guess he's going in a web browser, so... Nothing showing up in the web browser for Shane yet, I don't think.
Can you bring up Shane's screen, Cody? Oh, it's up. Oh, see, I'm still learning all these AV things.
Right, so anyways, talking about a little bit about the format, right? We have one machine out there, all 6 competitors are going into the same machine, and as you see...
The DNS not working.
The DNS is broken. Uh-oh. They'll figure it out. So it looks like what Shane's trying to do here is just figure out where the machine is on the internet, but DNS is broken, as DNS always is.
Seeing things that I was really looking forward to seeing. It's kind of the different approaches that we're going to see from everybody. Off the top of my head, I was really curious to see like what Corbin pulls out, being a very web-heavy guy, right? So as soon as they actually find the target, I'm sure we'll see them start scanning, or at least we're seeing some of them scan already.
We can see their sick desktop backgrounds up.
Yeah, but they're right when you have some like different perspectives or whatever, right? So we kind of expect CDL to maybe be doing something different. So did you straighten them out on?
Are we back on YouTube?
Yeah.
Cool, excellent. So OBS may crash occasionally. For those of you watching online, if it disappears, just hang out another 30 seconds and it'll be back. Yeah, so as Tyler was saying, CDL, Corbin Leo there, he does a lot of web stuff. He, I don't know, does bug bounty and HackerOne things, and he's very, very good at web. I would expect he'll find all of the good stuff on the web challenges very quick. So it looks like right now, because our DNS is completely broken, he is hard coding the IP address in, and hopefully I gave him the correct one there. We'll see if it actually works now.
Be helpful.
So first challenge is actually just figuring out how to get traffic to the target.
Seller,
yeah. He's got a sweet ZSH theme. Any ZSH users in the room? Do you guys use ZSH at all? So bash is like the traditional shell on, oh yeah, that's the right server. That's definitely the right server he just went to. It doesn't look like it immediately, but you give it 5 seconds and it's definitely the right one. So you can see in the source code here, right towards the, well, he's scrolling fast. There's a little bit of JavaScript that waits 5 seconds and then plays a video for you. And yeah, that's a good one. So he's looking into that. There's really nothing to find there. He's not going to gain anything from that, but it is kind of funny. Nice red herring.
So he's looking at web, like we said, it's kind of what we expected to see out of him. Flipping over to some of the other people, Cody, can you find us some people who are doing some scanning? Kind of the other end of things. So as soon as people are figuring out how to get their traffic there, start seeing some like some end mapping and things like that instead of looking at the web page.
Yeah, let's see some nmap scans.
Actually, let's go here.
So Chris is now just trying to install Derb, which I mean,
should have had his tools prepared ahead of time.
in typical Chris fashion, not having things ready.
Jailbreak just did some mapping.
Oh, good. So this is another red herring. There's really nothing to find here, but when you netcat to that service, you get this Rick ASCII art thing.
I think we got Jerbear in the same one too. Can
Yep.
we switch over to Jerbears real quick, Cody?
I'm curious to see
Jerbear?
how long
Yeah.
they'll wait
This is him.
on that. So a lot of times with...
Say, Chris is on the same thing, isn't he?
Yeah, I think your
Or was?
computer's lagging a little.
Oh, I was looking
It's
at the wrong
behind
one.
on the stream.
the
So
stream's
a lot of times, you'll see what he's doing here is he's trying to overflow a buffer. A lot of times with CTF challenges, you'll just be provided with a way to give input, and it will overwrite a return address, and you can hack the system that way. In this case, it's just reading however much input you give it and throwing it into the trash, throwing it at dev null, and then exiting. So there's really nothing to find there, but I just thought that was kind of a funny thing. So who do we have here? Chris has actually discovered something really useful. You can see, well, he's discovered Rick Astley again. That's excellent. You could see in his scans, though, a moment ago, that he had lots of usernames in the URLs, right? So Apache, at least on old systems, allows you to do tilde and then a username, and that will be a web root for that particular user. So the reason that this is useful in this case is if he gets a word list of potential usernames, he can then use that to brute force actual user accounts on the system.
And I think in like what we're seeing him do right now is he's getting them without using a user list specifically. He's just using a like regular, I think the base list for Derb, which is like 40. It's only like 4,300 entries long, but some of those things are going to end up being users like root and like FTP. I think is also user and mail and things like that are going to be default. Some of those are going to be default like Linux users and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, there are about 40 custom users, and they all have just first names. So if he was to get a list of real names, he might be able to find some valid user accounts there. He's trying to use screen.
So one thing we haven't quite talked about yet is kind of right. It's a very hack the box style box machine. So there are multiple ways. That one way that it differs is there are actually multiple ways to get to each step. Right, so there's roughly a handful, 4 or 5 ways just to get an initial foothold. There's a few ways to move laterally within the machine to other users. There's probably another 4 or 5 of those. And then there's probably about 4 ways to get from some of those users all the way up to root. Right, and that's kind of the goal. We do have flags set for pretty much all the users, but all we're doing is playing to root here.
So what is Logan doing here? What do you see? I don't recognize that tool on the right. Oh, that was dir, wasn't it?
It was dir search. A little bit different style, same thing though. Right, there's so many different tools that do that now between Derb and dir search, and so a lot of people do it with GoBuster, WFuzz. Some people have their custom line or like one-liners for WFuzz. So it just kind of depends. Some of them are a little better because Derb and DerbBuster aren't really supported as much anymore, like those two that most people end up using. They're just not supported as well, and I think some of the other tools are starting to get a little bit better.
So I want to talk about what he's doing on the left there. He's trying to connect to the FTP server, File Transfer Protocol, and on some old machines and some CTFs, FTP will allow anonymous login, where you just use your username anonymous and anything as a password. And that's a pretty common one, so we didn't include that in this CTF, but you can see him attempting it here. But now it looks like he's trying to connect to FTP from inside of the FTP.
He doesn't know quite where
maybe
he's at
fumbling
on
with the commands just a little bit. There's also an old exploit for VSFTPD 2.3.4, is that correct?
Yep.
That allows you basically just to enter a smiley face and it gives you a shell. That was a backdoor from years ago. That is also a common one from CTFs and Metasploitable VMs. So
yeah, especially the very, very beginner ones of like the first thing you do is go and exploit VSFTPD because you can get a fairly reliable shell out of it. Right, it's going to be one of the easier ones.
that was in an older version though. Oh, good. So Logan has found the game directory, which contains a really, really awful web application for playing chess. And this is somewhat of a red herring. There's not really, I don't think, any way to execute code on it, but there are tons of SQL injections all over. So if he pokes around a little bit, I don't think there's any public ones, but if he pokes around the source code just a little bit, he's going to find SQL injection all over it. And at a bare minimum, what that should allow him to do He's just searching for exploits.
Fortunately, he can get the source from SourceForge.
Yeah, it is right there, the second link. He clicked the first, and now he's going to the third. The source code is also hosted on the website itself. It's not an easily guessable file name, but there is a Git folder in the web root also that they may find that with.
I would guess a lot of the Dirtbuster tools in the default list now, well, depending on which list they use, but a lot of those should find that .git.
I would think
and
so.
give them that kind of entryway in.
So this web chess, if they can find a SQL injection on it, one thing that will give them is the ability to read files off of the system. And with that privilege, they can then cat the etc password file, which would give them a list of usernames. Ooh, and it looks like something is very broken there. Oh, he's trying to reinstall it. I'm not sure if that would work or not. That was not an intended path, but it may very well be a valid one. So it looks like he's grepping the source code, looking for potential vulnerabilities. I didn't see exactly what he grepped for there.
I'm betting he grepped for something like default passwords that are in there, just.
Oh, look. Yes, he found something. So he found backup.sql. Where did he find that?
Did he actually find it, or did he miss it?
No, so, okay. He just found something very cool, and I'm not sure if he really recognized it or not. But he found a backup.sql file somewhere. I missed where. Wow, I think he just found a vulnerability I did not even know about. That is awesome.
So this is exactly what we thought was going to happen, right? We see Corbin going the web route over some of the other ones, like very hard on web. You don't see a lot of good stuff.
He is reinstalling the web application. I'm not positive that this is a great idea, but this is definitely something I would try if I was in his position.
We do have backups to this, right? We can.
No, but of course not.
So
I suppose I could pull a backup live real fast.
For our purpose of being able to revert to a snapshot.
That would have been smart.
In case something goes real wrong.
Yeah, oh well. If any of you are in the market for publishing a 0-day, getting a CVE for yourself, web chess would be a great thing to look at because it's full of them and it has never been properly published or researched. So seriously, go look at web chess, look for SQL injections. You could get a CVE to your name. And you won't really hurt anyone because I think the installed user base is 0. So it's not like you're going to really put anyone at risk and you get a CVE. So I'm really wishing that I had backed this all up now. In fact, I might just break out for a minute and do that because he may be about to. Let's just let it ride. Let's see what happens. What do you see there, Tyler? Anything interesting you want to talk about?
You log in the box and just block that IP.
So we do always have that option of just shutting them down real quick.
Oh, go over to Logan. Go over to Logan.
So Logan did find
I found it yet.
Yeah, so Logan found the Git repo. This is actually a pretty common vulnerability in the real world. Web developers will watch their web directory with Git so that they can keep track of all of the changes they make. And if you forget to make that unreadable from the public-facing web server, you can actually browse through the Git repo and essentially recreate all of the files that are in the web directory. So you can get things like config files, and that looks like what he's doing here. That's actually a config for Git itself. But if he were to recursively wget that whole Git folder, he should be able, there it is, recursive wget, he ought to be able to recreate those files and then get things like passwords out of it. He will also be able to find there's a web shell hidden in there somewhere, and that may at least get him user level access on the box. So
One of the things is there's lots of, anytime you have a web application that gets pushed automatically from somewhere, I've seen a lot of web challenges that will they'll do something, or not web challenges, CTF challenges where you'll have to find something like the thumbs.db. So if any of your Mac users the stupid extra file it pulls for what's in your directory, there are actually ways if you find that on a web page, the hidden file, you can pull that out and start to do some more recon and see other files that are kind of laying around. So. Right, similar idea of what they're doing with .git, and something like Dirb or Dirbuster or whatever. Most lists are going to have that one too. So taking a look at the.
Jerbear got rickrolled. Whoops.
taking a look at the scoreboard, we still have nobody that's found the first user, right? But so there was 4 ways to get on the machine, right?
Yeah, so let me just review our notes here. There are multiple ways to initially break in, and then of course multiple ways to get root. One of the good ways to break in is there's a file called testing.php, which I expect some of them will find eventually. There they found it right there. Shane found it. So Shane found testing.php, which looks like it just runs PHP info. But at the bottom, there is a web shell hiding underneath all of that data, and it looks like he has located it, so he ought to be able to execute some PHP commands now. I'm curious to watch his screen for a minute. Yeah, so you see he's trying to write some PHP code at the bottom here. I am not sure how he got that source code. Did he find the Git directory as well?
I didn't see.
He probably did. So he's trying to execute PHP code with the shell. And if you see it, just looks for post submit and then evaluates post test. So he will certainly have a shell very soon if he gets that working.
So I think will be interesting to see is what he does with that, right? So once he actually starts, I'm sure the first thing he's gonna do, like we've already seen, he's looking for stuff like cat password, which I'm sure he'll find really quickly. But is he gonna try to do something with that to turn around and get that into a full shell right away, or is what's he gonna do, right?
Syntax error. Oh, okay. I think that's actually his fault. I think he wrote the code wrong. So you can see he tried to send in some PHP code. He wrote it incorrectly. I'm sure he'll fix that here in just a moment. But that will give him a shell as the root user. He must have found the Git directory and recreated that. There's no way he could have had that otherwise. So once he gets a low-level user shell, I would hope and expect he would cat the etc password file, figure out what the valid usernames are, and then start doing some password brute forcing, because there are 2 or 3 of those users that have really, really bad, top 5 passwords. Should be pretty easy to get. And that'll get him SSH on the box, and then he can start moving around a lot more. So Cody, who else do we have there? You want to go back to the main screen? Let's check in with spicy.dll. What does he have going on? Looks like he's got exploit DB up. He's looking for an exploit for Nagios, which is not something that we're running on the box. So I'm not sure how he found that or what he's fingerprinting there. I hope he's attacking the right machine. We'll wait just a second. But, it's not uncommon for a scanner to report the wrong piece of software based on some banner. Right. So it's possible that he scanned that and it told him it was Nagios, and he's looking for something. What's that?
3306 reported it as
33.
Nagios.
Yeah, interesting. So in the nmap scan, it actually reported it as Nagios. So we can see he's trying the VSFTPD 2.3.4 backdoor. This is patched against that. It's a much newer version.
Yeah, I mean, he saw that right away. From before he cleared the screen, he had just from trying to log in with a regular user, anonymous user, you could see that.
Do the thing. Ooh, I like where this is going. Do the thing. .py.
I believe the term is do the damn thing.
So I'm really, really curious here because now we've got Shane is close. I think CDL was close. LMS was close. Close-ish anyways, right? We have all these people that are getting close to the first shell, 20 minutes in.
So I saw somebody had, who has the Linux system call table up there?
That was,
Could you bring that screen up? Does that person already have a shell?
I think it was.
I'm guessing either LMS or Jerbear.
I think he did.
Yeah, so he definitely got logged in. He found some cross-site scripting, which is awesome. That's a CVE right there. That's a 0-day, but it won't get you into the box. So
yes, but now since he reinstalled it, he would have rebuilt it with his own creds. Were they able to get in before?
They should have been able to.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, there should have been a method.
So he's literally just looking for things that we didn't even plan to have in.
Yeah, so it would not surprise me if he finds a way to hack this application. It is about as bad as a PHP application could possibly be. He's definitely trying some custom things here.
The other thing now, so he's going down this rabbit hole of maybe it won't work, maybe it will. So, we have a 2-hour competition window is what we've kind of set up for. So now it's like a rabbit hole of spending time on it. How long do you sit and beat your head against something that that may or may not work until you move on, right? Because normally we can spend days and days and days looking at bugs and looking for stuff like that, but when you know that there are pre-planted vulnerabilities, like, where do you go from there? Or at what point do you move on?
So he has definitely found SQL injection. Cody, have you seen which screen had the...
It was, yeah.
It was CDL that had the system call table up?
Yep, I'm pretty sure.
Nice.
I'm watching for anywhere else.
If you see it, bring it back up.
Right.
Any thoughts or questions from the audience as they're going? Do you guys see anything that you would be trying if you were sitting in their seats right now?
Good talk.
I have to say, one thing that I'm surprised they're not doing more of is looking at the other services. There's a ton of focus on the web application, and although there is one or two ways to get in through the web app, there are other potentially easier ways, both through password brute forcing. The SQL server is wide open to the public.
Yeah, have
and
we
I would
seen
think they would-
anybody that, so like with so few services open, have we seen anybody start doing brute forcing in SSH yet?
No, I have not. And I've been watching the HTOP here. They are getting, well, actually the server is not even under that much load, which is a surprise to me. When they start brute forcing, I'm sure that'll go up.
Over the network, though, it's going to be a little bit slower, so I don't know if you'll, on that end, feel that as much anyways, unless they're all hitting at the same time. But even something like Hydra set up on 4 or 5 threads, which I think it usually recommends doing 4 with SSH. I don't think that's going to be enough to put that under any sort of pain.
So what does Jerbear have going on here? He is running John. So John is a password cracking tool, of course. I would imagine then that means he has password hashes, and if he doesn't yet have root, there's only one place I think he could have found those. Nope, I was wrong. Somehow he got the MySQL hashes, and what he probably will find very quickly, it is hidden behind his name there, but there is a user called Backup whose password is just Backup. And if he can crack that password, he ought to be able to log in remotely as that user, and then at least start reading files off of the system. So that would be a good place to get the Etsy password file and start brute forcing SSH accounts. But he's doing something wrong, because that should have been a pretty easy password to crack, and I don't see it. Yeah, so clearly he's looking at the right thing here. Those password hashes are what he wants to be working on.
So I'm guessing we didn't see it, but I'm guessing he got a dump through just doing SQL map.
Probably so.
Using the dump parameter with that, so it just dumps out all the files and stuff like that. Which is actually, sometimes that can go really, really slow when you're trying to pull all the files and all the tables out. So if you use something like the dump all, that would probably still be running if that's what he did. So I'm not 100% sure what he ran there.
So he's learning more about John. One of the cool things about Capture the Flag events is all of the cool little tricks that you pick up as you're forced to learn them, right? So I'm guessing that doing MySQL password cracking, oh, there he got it. That's probably not something that he had done a bunch in the past, but he checked the man page and he figured it out very quickly. So there is a user called Backup whose password is Backup. He is trying that in the wrong place. So this is that's the login for the web application. What he just cracked is the password for the SQL server. But you see 3306 MySQL is open, and he ought to be able to use that in order to log in. He is trying to SSH in. This will probably not work, but it's a good guess. So he'll need to think just a little bit about how he uses that username and password. What we're looking for there is him to use the MySQL command. I'm sure he'll figure it out in a moment. Cody, do you see anybody else doing the same thing there?
So Backup isn't a regular user on the...
Correct. Yeah, the only default users on MySQL should be root. And I think on Debian systems there's one called like Debian DB by default. No, Backup is a custom one, but that's not unusual to have a pretty simple to guess user account. The real vulnerability here is that MySQL is listening publicly. That is a non-default option, and that user is allowed to log in from any host, which is a non-default option. One of the really cool things that MySQL does is, as part of the authentication, not only do you have a username and a password, but you also have where that user is allowed to log in from. So you can restrict, like, the root account. It has no password, but it's only allowed to log in from localhost, and that's actually a pretty secure configuration because somebody would have to be on the box already in order to log in. So that's kind of a cool thing that MySQL does. So I see we have CrackStation open here. Somebody is trying to crack a password hash that they retrieved from the backup file. Is this Logan? Oh, we're still looking at CDL.
So
My apologies.
Switch over to CDL.
The screens are out of sync.
Yeah,
Ooh, did someone get a shell?
I think he's still looking for.
He's still poking around the web app.
So as they're kind of doing this, one other thing that we haven't quite talked about that you haven't seen from your side is how they actually submit the flags, right? So as they're going along and finding users, the way that CTFD shows it, or basically the framework that we're using, is it's not going to show them the username. So there's a connection that they have to make that basically we're giving them the UID of the user instead of the username. So, like, once you look at CTFD, we put in like 40 challenges, even though only about a dozen of them are actually relevant. So they'll actually have to make that connection and just to get the flag inputted once they find one.
So I'm
Show
surprised.
flags.
What's that?
You could pull up flags on yours.
Oh yeah, can we pull up your screen?
Yeah.
Meme.
Yeah, so from the admin side, this is basically what they're seeing when they look at challenges, right? So we see user and then some number, which actually ends up being their UID. Not in any order, just no hints really for anything. It just shows up as, user and the number, even no message. Then there's one special one for root.
So the reason that we did them by user IDs and not usernames is we didn't want to give them any hints about what the usernames on the machine might be. And that should be a good hint to them that finding those usernames will be a valuable resource for them as they work. So hopefully they will find those soon.
We did have a comment on the stream of RMRF/. So that would be the ultimate game over if whoever gets root first decides to RMRF/ really quickly and just dump everyone out, because the box will still sort of run for a little bit and do some things, but
We'll see. Cody, would you go back over to Shane's screen real quick? So it really looks like Shane has a shell here. We see on the right-hand side a whole bunch of output. He's running commands. Yes, so he has figured out that there is the PHP eval allows him to execute commands. It looks like he wrote a script in order to help him with that, and he is moving around. Well, let's watch him do it here. Uh-oh, did it go down? Nope, there it is. So he has a script that's allowing him to execute commands and get the output, and I would expect that pretty soon he will have some more access. You see he has all of the real usernames there on the side. And if he tries even basic top 10 passwords against that user list, he will have SSH access very quickly.
You guys had to put a Sean on there? Come on.
Yes, there's a Sean on there. And there's 2 Zanes. These are actually, I don't want to violate FERPA, but these may be names of real people that we pulled from a random source.
So you see catflag.txt doesn't show anything for...
Excellent, yes. So he has CD'd to a user's home directory. He is in Sean's home directory, and he can see that there is a file called flag.txt, but he is unable to read it. There is directory listing enabled on those user home directories, so they can see what's in them, but the flags are chmod o-r, so they cannot read them. They'll need to be that user in order to read it.
Yes, so that's one of the things. Only each user can read their own flag, except for root, who can then read everyone's flag.
He's using a great tool here. You want to talk about that one, Tyler?
Oh, Lininium?
Yep.
So with actually any system out there, there's lots of different tools that people have developed. So once you get on a machine in any competition, whatever, we're looking to escalate. So one way to do that internal reconnaissance very, very quickly, obviously have a script to do it. There's 3 really famous ones out there for Linux right now that are common. There's Linenum, so the one he's using. basically just does a ton of different checks against the system for any files that have been misconfigured, any passwords laying around in directories, checks for tools that you may need for exploitation, all sorts of stuff like that. Then there's also Unix Privest Checker, and then what's the third one? Another Lin one. Linenum and Linux Exploit Suggester. So LES is typically what people rename it to. And some of the things they'll do other than just look for stuff is they'll also start looking at the file system and looking for things like outdated kernel, outdated modules for stuff. So very quick way to get a lot of output. I don't think in this case tonight they're going to get a ton from it.
There should be a few things they'll find. So there are a couple of files in the etc directory which are writable, which should give them root if used correctly. It'll be a little bit of a trick to do. But if he finds that those are writable, that could be helpful. There is also one set user ID binary. It's a custom one that has a buffer overflow in it. And if he identifies that, and then the source code is right there with it. So he could potentially figure out what it's doing and then use that to get root. There's one other way to get root. What was it? Oh, cron tabs. There is one particular user that has a cron tab allowing them to run links as root. And if he figures that out, he could abuse that to make it run a custom command and get root that way. So it looks like he's trying to create a shared library here, but he has opened VI. Yeah, it looks like he opened VI through a netcat connection, and that is generally not helpful. Nano would have, I don't think even Nano would have worked. There are ways to get it to work, but it would have been tricky.
Yeah, building a better shell with Python PTY spawn. Basically, just the step you would need to take to help him out there.
Yep, that would have been a nice trick. I have not yet seen any other competitors find this web shell hiding at the bottom of the PHP info. Have you?
I have not. I haven't seen anything either.
He must be struggling.
Oh, there we go. He's doing the Python trick.
Yep. So just what we're talking about.
So Tyler, what's he doing here?
So right,
It's like they're listening.
a lot of times when you have like a really terrible shell, so over netcat, over if it's just a regular command shell session through Metasploit, there's a way to basically upgrade it. It takes two commands. As long as Python's on the machine, you can see do python-c, import p2i spawn to do bin.bash, right? So basically spawn a bash shell. There's also another command that I didn't see him do that has to do, it's fixing the TTY. It's like echo dash STTY raw or something like that to fix it to the point where something like VI would work, or Vim or Nano, or like all those like interactive editors, right? So those are kind of the steps you need to take to make that shell better.
So he's just trying to get a C file onto the system right now, and that's proving to be tricky because it has multiple lines and he can't exactly use echo all at once to do it. It looks like he's trying some sort of like library exploit against the ping binary, which is of course set user ID. It looks like he's trying something with capabilities. I will be interested to see if this works because this was not an intended path to root. And if he has found something that works, that's super cool, because otherwise this is an up-to-date Debian box, and that would be interesting. So he is creating the file line by line, which is probably a lot of work, but may be effective.
So while I was doing that, Cody, can we pull up some of the other competitors to see what everyone else is doing?
Yeah, let's scroll
If anyone else is making progress through, we still see at least two.
We haven't looked at Jerbear or Dark Rain in a while, or Spicy DLL.
So they both look like they're working on the web chess.
Yep.
CDL looks like he has moved past it onto something else. I can't see.
Ooh, go over to
Which ones?
go to Logan's LMS. It looks like he may. Oh, he's still looking through the Git logs. Okay. So.
Which there's still a way through that there, isn't there too? Right.
Yep. Through the Git logs, they ought to be able to find the web shell, which then gives them, of course, shell access to the machine. If they just grep for eval, they'll find it. It's the only eval on the system. Sean, what do you see? See anything interesting there you want to?
I'm looking at something else at the moment.
Perfect. Right on.
Sorry.
It's actually
You're good.
looks like Jerbear and Chris were just looking at the same exact thing.
So if I'm not wrong, Shane is the only one right now that actually has a real shell. I may have missed it if anybody else got it, but I think he's the only one that's actually executing code on the box.
Yeah, so I think they're still both looking at the chess game, which So the other
Super
interesting,
broken.
yeah, the other interesting now that has it changed? Is it different at all now that Corbin or CDL has reinstalled that?
It may have. It's possible. That should not keep them from getting access to the box. This was mostly a red herring with a little bit of potential for leaking files.
Got
Russian security. Ah, that looks good. I'm going to check this out later.
Not expert.
Dot expert. What a fantastic URL. RussianSecurity.expert. Also, I'm loving that ZSH theme.
He's going to try to send up a MySQL server here, and
Interesting. So I think what he's trying to do here is he's trying to reconfigure the web chess, the program to connect to his own SQL server, and he could then serve it his own data, which would allow him to log in even if he shouldn't otherwise.
yeah,
be able
if
to.
he was able to get something that could load his data onto the page, he might be able to load his own
PHP code
his
or
own
something.
PHP shells.
Potentially, yeah.
This is the long way around compared to some of the other routes, but probably it'd be really cool if he pulled it off.
Yeah, that is one of the things I'm most excited about here, is for any of them to find things that I did not intend. Ah, so it looks like Spicy is brute forcing usernames based on that tilde trick that we discussed before. You can see %7e Jeremy, which I believe is a tilde with a username after it, and looks like maybe the box is taking a while to respond. Let me check. No, CPU usage is good. RAM is not overly utilized. So he is probably trying to figure out usernames on the machine based on that. I'm guessing that the PHP application is super messed up now, so.
And we still haven't seen anybody go after SSH, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that, as you're doing something, right, as you're doing a competition that requires speed, I'm typically going to have 4 windows open all on the same screen and be doing 4 different things at once, right? So Derb's going to be running, something like Hydra's going to be running, Metasplit's going to be running, doing something, right? Not just one thing at a time.
Yeah, and it may be that SSH brute forcing is not usually used as a challenge in CTFs. That's not something commonly seen. It's really common in the real world. I can tell you from experience that if you use the password fall 2019 and you spray that around somebody's Active Directory environment, you will find all kinds of fun things. And if they try that on this machine, they will also find some fun things. But they would just have to be kind of thinking in a real world mindset rather than a CTF mindset in order to discover that. Okay. Well, let's, it looks like,
Jibber's still looking at his MySQL dump.
so is he still trying to crack the password there, or is he looking through the data?
I think he's looking through the entire database, looking for different things. Probably looking for some other users, which, if there are other users and creds there with a full dump, you'll be able to get some hashes, which may lead you into the box, but in this case, probably not a whole lot of helpful there.
Using his incognito browser so he can't get caught. He's probably got his hood on, sunglasses, fingerless hacker gloves.
So it also looks like Chris just stumbled. I think almost most of the competitors now have stumbled across iNet Rick,
Yes.
the best red herring we have. But back to the game again.
WC user. I am not certain what Dark Rain is going after there. Yeah, so I'm realizing everyone is getting very hung up on the web chess.
Yeah. Well, or whatever rabbit hole.
And it wouldn't be
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me if Chris has someone else in the room just to play him in chess right now either.
Yeah, Chris would be the type to challenge everyone to a chess match.
we
during
could
a
commentate on
competition.
that too.
Yeah, I would love to. Yes, E4. Kasparov loved that move back when he played Fischer in the 80s. Oh, good. Okay, are we on Shane?
Yep.
Right, so Shane has just discovered something really important here. The sudoers file, which defines what each user is allowed to do with the sudo command, is generally not world readable. I made it world readable, though, to give them some sense of which users they should be targeting, because there's 40 users and only about 10 or 12 of them will actually give you anything of value on the box. Yes, so he says people in the apps group can install. So he noticed that they can run the apt install command, and the Skylar user is allowed to run links and somehow execute code. He is definitely onto something good there. He may be the closest to root so far.
So looking at the suitors file there, it wasn't a no password though for Skylar running links.
Correct. They do need the password, but once they compromise the account, they will have the password by nature if they compromised it.
So there's no other way of moving into that account laterally?
No, but the password on that account is pretty easy. So if he either finds the world-readable backup file of all the password hashes, or if he starts brute forcing passwords, he'll probably get the password to that account. And the trick that I found, this is probably only one of many ways to abuse links to get root, is links takes a -editor command that allows you to define what program to run when it edits a file. You can change that to be your own program and then try and edit something, and it will run your own code. So if he figures out the password for that account, that would give him root.
So what I haven't actually seen, as soon as he typed that, I'm surprised I didn't, or maybe he did, but I didn't see it go straight back to GTFO bins and look for the sudo for that, because that's the first thing I would have done.
I saw him do that. And
oh, he did do
came
that?
up.
Yeah. Yep.
So we ought to, maybe after this competition, we ought to add that one to the GTFO bins.
Yeah, because if something on that showed up on GTFO bins, he would be done by now, right? It'd be easy and game would be over.
Yep. So he has correctly identified that inetdric is a dead end. He found the MySQL server, and he's found at least 2 paths to root if he had the passwords to those accounts. So I'm assuming he'll go after those accounts next.
So he's also, for those watching, if he got in through the web, so he's currently in the context of the dub data user, correct?
Yes.
Right, so dub data user doesn't have any flags, doesn't have a whole lot of permissions to do anything. Are there any lateral movements out of
the dub data user? Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, there is a world-readable backup of all of the password hashes in the var backup directory. That is not a default thing, like we did that custom, so if they identify that, they have all of the contents of the etc directory, and that gives them password hashes. That would allow him to go from dub data to root. Or there are, once he has the usernames, of course, password brute forcing would do it. Those are probably the 2 main ways. Oh, we got comments in the chat that we have been
something
missing.
about the competition type.
So what's the competition type going to be called? The suggestion from the side is Spicy Dill. So we have not really come up with a name for this so far. In fact, we have not come up with a formal set of rules or a formal specification for what it will actually be. If it continues to be, if this goes well for the next hour, I would hope that we do it again next semester. But if you have any great names for it, please send them to us. Send suggestions, and we may select them.
So he's looking at LD config, Andrew. What are we looking at here?
Okay, yeah, this is actually a valid path to root. So LD config allows you to change what libraries get loaded by a program by default when they run. Obviously, if you can define a custom library that a set user ID program like bin ping runs, then you can root it because your library can run custom code as root. There are a few files in the etc directory that define what by default should be allowed. Those are world writable. So if he changes those to point to his own libraries, and then he is able to load those libraries with a set user ID binary, he should be able to root the box. This, I think, is probably one of the more difficult paths to root, but it's definitely a valid one.
Did we see him find those things in Etsy?
No, but he is looking in the right direction. So he's trying to compile a shared library right now. And he is using the attribute constructor, which will make that function run immediately when the code is loaded. This is actually kind of a cool trick. If you're writing Linux malware, you can get a function to run before main runs by adding attribute constructor, and that will all run before what's actually in the program actually happens. So for instance, you can have a main function that just prints hello world and looks harmless, but have a constructor function which overwrites that with other useful code that you want to run, and it will look like one thing in IDA and then do something else when you run it. Ooh,
so
what did you find?
Logan has an interesting finding, right? So again, going back to there was stuff that was world readable from dub data through the web application.
Yes.
So it looks like he's found an SSH key but he's not using it.
So Logan, where was he logged in? Oh, I wish we could switch his own screen. I wish I could see what he was doing. He found an SSH key in, I think, the Janessa
Janessa
and
loot.
the loot directory, which should allow him to log in as the Myron user. Tyler, duck your head down just a hair. Yep, the Myron user. If he can get the private key in that directory, that would allow him to pivot to a different user and SSH in. That would give him SSH access. I don't think there's a direct path from Myron to root, or that may have been one of the ones in the apps group. I'll have to look back. Yeah, let me check on that real quick.
So he's still, even though he's got this, he still doesn't actually have access to the machine. He doesn't have any code execution. So still, I think the only one with code execution so far is Shane, who also still hasn't found a way out of www data, even though he's
I'm sorry, go ahead.
attempting to go straight to root if he can figure that out.
Can you go back to Logan's screen there, Cody? So Logan, it looks like, has also discovered that if he had a valid set of credentials, he could upload a file to the public HTML directory, and that would then run PHP code as well. That's a bit pointless because if you have credentials on the box, you can already SSH in anyway, but that would also be one path to get code execution.
Not necessarily though, right? SSH could be configured slightly differently depending on
That's
which
true.
users can actually log in, which
That's
he
true.
doesn't necessarily know yet because he hasn't found something like cat password to tell him what shells people are allowed to log in as, right? So he was trying Skylar there, and that could be one of those users that just has a no login shell, which wouldn't work.
So he definitely does have code execution on the box because if you look at the left-hand side, he ran a recursive ls and he can see everything in the home directories. So I'm guessing that he probably used the PHP shell just like Shane did in order to do that.
You can see it slightly behind the transparent background there, actually.
Oh, and he's also running Linux enum. Perfect. That's 2 votes for Linux enum. I personally would have used Unix privesc check, but I may be outdated in what's the most effective tool.
I don't know
old
which
school
one
in that way.
is the most up to date, or even people keep working on it. But going back to what he was just trying, that is a different approach than what we saw before too, which is actually really interesting.
So he definitely found the web shell there.
Yep. But to use something like the Pwn library to upload and run it, and then depending on how I set it, pull back the data really quickly, which I've never seen anybody do that before.
Yeah, so the Pwn tools library, what he was using in Python there, is an excellent library for CTFs because it has all kinds of really quick and simple ways to connect to services and do software exploitation things. It's just a really, it's like a hot knife through butter for CTF challenges.
Yeah, so you saw in all of 3 lines, he had basically a upload, run, and I'm guessing one more line here, and he'll pull it back down.
Yeah, pretty quick and easy. He's good at Pwn tools too. That is definitely one of Logan's strengths. Oh, and my phone is not on silent. My goodness, how embarrassing. Teacher's going to take it away. Oh, it's an email from my uncle.
None of those
It's
are
probably a forward from, I don't know. It's a forwarded email from my uncle. I'll check that one later. Yeah, so he's still checking out Pwn tools there. It looks like he's probably trying to find a way to connect to FTP, or is he doing SSH here? He might be doing some SSH brute forcing. I hope. I'm amazed nobody has been brute forcing SSH yet. It is slow. It's not an obvious way in, but for top 10 passwords.
It just has to be because it's not a common CTF thing to see.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's definitely not common.
The other thing, the thing that'll be interesting to see is if once somebody gets close enough, if they start doing something like if they actually try to go and get Etsy Shadow and actually try to crack those.
Yep. So what are we doing time-wise here? How are we doing? We're an hour
So
in.
about 50 minutes since we actually started, which one person with a somewhat shell, right, a www data shell.
2 people with it.
Two people now found the same way in, right? And we said we had 3 other ways in.
Yep.
I think looking at some of the other people, right, we have Logan working through the uploading of Linenum, Shane, who's already got that far and done that, and is working on the LD preload way of escalating to root. Chris and Jerbear still look like they're looking at the game stuff,
At web chess.
the web chess, and Spicy DLL has Durbuster up, the actual the GUI front end for that. It looks like he's found a bunch of things. I don't know if he knows
What does he have here? So he did find the Jeremy user. That's interesting. He's poking through the web chest folder. He's probably not going to find much in that folder.
So the other thing we see here, if you look at that interface, it's not actually running anymore. Otherwise, I guarantee whatever list he used, he would have seen more users than just Jeremy, right? Like, root's going to show up if they're using any sort of Durbuster list at all.
Yep. So being 1 hour in, and this being our first run here, we had some discussions of if there hadn't been like real access in the first hour, we would make it easier, or we would, add a vulnerability, or go give them a hint. Considering that 2 of them already have shells, I'm tempted to just let it ride another 30 minutes. I don't see any reason to make it any easier right now, unless there's strong feeling from the audience that we should speed this up.
I'd say probably maybe another 15 or 20 minutes before we try to catch the other competitors up till they get to the same point.
That's a good idea. Maybe in about 15 minutes we'll suggest some password brute forcing if they
just to get them to the user.
Yeah, one of the things that can be really frustrating in a CTF is working with those limited web shells. Once you have a real shell of a user via SSH, it's just a lot more fun and a lot easier to work with.
Yeah, like we talked about how Shane figured out how to fix a shell using the Python import PTY stuff to spawn a new shell. I hadn't seen Logan do that yet, which would make things a little bit easier. But still, without doing the other half of that, the echo STTY raw, it's kind of still limited in the fact that VI is still not going to work very well, if at all, really. So you don't have an editor, you can't look at stuff as easily or modify things.
Definitely makes it harder. Yeah.
All right, so I think we were still looking at him, and it looked like he was still, the last time that I saw, still trying to echo stuff into a file, doing it that way instead of...
Oh, look, he found it. Okay.
Yep, so from, like we said, using Linux enum suggester or LES or whichever one he used, it is showing, or there was one that showed that was runnable from a user, right?
Yep. So there is one user that is allowed to run links as root, and that is a very easy path to root. He would have to be that user, of course, first, but he has definitely identified that is a valid way to get root. If you see on the left-hand side of his screen, he just scrolled it off.
So
there's a user called Logan. That's funny.
He's actually looking at the output from the tool that he used, right? So whether it was Linux Suggester or what was the other one? LES and Linenum.
Yep. So I don't believe that the Logan user on the box actually has anything of real value. He can see that root is allowed to log in. I was hoping that Logan would find the set user ID binary, because one of his strengths is software exploitation, and I think he would have a lot of fun, and it'd be fun to watch.
I gotta imagine that shows up somewhere in this output.
You would think. Although it's not in any of the traditional binary directories, he would have to look in the opt directory, and it may not be searching in those by default. So he can see all of the processes running. So I'm hoping he'll grep through this and he'll find that set user ID binary, and he will definitely go at that one hard if so. So another cool path to root that I probably saw if he was looking through the sudoers file was there are 3 users in the apps group, and the apps group is allowed to run sudo apt install, run that as root. If you can install anything, did you see it there, Cody? If you can install anything as root, you can write your own, like, quote-unquote package that will just create a set user ID bash binary, and then that will give you root. So once you can install things on the system, of course, that's game over.
So we do have a comment of once the competition gets going or once we move on, start removing the red herrings as we go.
That's a good idea, yeah.
So
that's a great idea.
Well, that's actually good, yeah.
Like, just start, because...
What?
Oh, so Jeremy is watching The Office, which is not a surprise to me.
He probably knows every line to this episode. Probably knows the entire threat level of the script.
I'm sure we're violating some sort of YouTube copyright with that. Yeah. But it's hosted on their own site, right? If they're, what are they going to copyright claim their own website? So
who knows?
Whatever.
So it looks like Chris has finally switched away from, Dark Green has switched away from looking at the games and is looking at FTP. Right, we still had Shane still looking at the LD preload stuff. Logan was looking at the, still looking at the, where's he at? We're still looking at the output from LES. Spicy DLL. Mason is, I don't know.
Got another Rickroll there. That's good. I'm tempted to go suggest password brute forcing to them, but I don't want to do so if only one or two have the list of users. Once most of them have the list of users, though, I'm tempted to go recommend that they try the top 10 passwords, and that will at least get them a little bit further. But we'll give them another minute here.
Andrew sent you a message.
Okie dokie, I'll go check it out.
So I definitely thought going into this that we would have somebody at one of the users, the regular users by now. Obviously, we still only have 2 people in www data land. And then surprised that we haven't seen anybody move into the users. I know Andrew and I definitely had the conversation before of, like what happens if somebody roots it in like 30 minutes and then we just kind of go home. But this has definitely been, kind of on a little bit.
Will not be provided.
Pizza is on you. Yeah, so the red herrings really slowed it down a bit. We had a good question from the audience of, is there anything useful in the public HTML directories? There is not by default. I figured that one web shell was probably enough. But if they get any of the user passwords, they can, of course, upload stuff there and have a PHP shell.
Yep.
How's
So-
Logan doing with the chest?
Yeah, let's go back and look.
So one question from the stream we had, when Logan was scrolling through Linynum, did I see a cron tab that killed NC processes every 5 minutes?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Oh, I forgot about that. I completely forgot that I added that. So if you were to look at the cron tab, Etsy cron tab, there is a job that runs every 5 minutes that just kills all of the netcat programs.
So no wonder why Shane was having so many issues with
Yeah,
that.
every 5 minutes those shells will die. There's a comment in there, too, that says, darn hackers or something. And so hopefully they'll see that as well.
I think we could do some of that going forward in the future too. More of maybe not defenses, but just instead of having red herrings, things that do slow them up like that. Because that, like, if he's going through netcat and he starts doing internal reconnaissance, cron tabs might not be the first thing he looks at. So, it might take him 15, 20 minutes to find a cron tab, which means if it's dying every 5 minutes, he's had to reset it 4 times, right?
Yep.
So that could be really interesting if we start doing that stuff going forward too.
So your shell dying in 5 minutes is something that would realistically happen, like on a real engagement in the real world. That's not something traditionally used in CTF, so I'm guessing there's going to be some pushback against that. I can understand why that would be frustrating and not desirable. We'll I don't know. We'll discuss it afterwards.
So has Jerbear given up?
Jerbear's still trying to play chess here.
After just watching The Office for a little bit and then just kind of watching Rickroll.
We'll give it a little while longer and then I'll go give him a hint. It's only 7:04.
Yeah, so
Or
we're
spill the
not
beans
quite
too soon.
an hour in from when they got access to the URL at 6:07, which took them another 5 minutes to figure out how to get their traffic there in the first place.
Yep.
We haven't been to CDL in a little bit.
Yeah, let's go check out CDL's screen. What's CDL doing? Just trying. So he's playing with the FTP server. He's still trying anonymous login. That's not going to work. But I would imagine no. So he is a little bit unhappy about there not being an anonymous login there. I forgot to enable give shell.
I think that'd be a good one for next time too. A good red herring of having
Right.
an anonymous FTP, but they can't do anything. No upload, no download.
Yep. So he's kind of going down the right path here of just trying usernames, maybe trying some passwords, try some defaults. I really want him to try that top 10 list. We'll give him another 10 minutes and then we'll
I don't
see.
believe there's an admin user on the box, so
No, there is not. Root is a valid user. Root's password is about 45 random characters, so
yeah.
that is not a valid path to root, just logging in.
Well, it is if he guesses it.
Can we talk about how beautiful that ZSH theme is? Just fantastic. Right, so he's using a shell there called ZSH. Bash is the default, but ZSH has a bunch more features, and it just makes it more comfy. He found some VSFTPD exploits, but they're all too old.
Yeah, same thing of what we saw before as they go after 234, but it tells you right when you log in or try to log in as anonymous as it's 303. Right?
Yep.
So it's not going to be valid.
So
for
what did
that.
he have going where he was brute forcing there? Was that some SQL map
I
output?
think that was SQL map output, which we saw some table output there.
Yep. Thoughts from the audience? Cool. How's our stream doing here? Lol, that's beautiful. Good. So he's got his syscall reference up there. I get excited when I see that page because that page is very useful when you start exploiting the set user ID binary. And what is he doing here? This is a port scan of some sort.
It looked like a custom one, but it's looping through the same ports over and over again.
Hacker.com.
And it's only got a handful of ports.
How are you doing, buddy? Yeah, let's just check how the server's doing here. I'm actually very pleased with how the server is performing. It's got 1 core and 2 gigs of RAM, and they have nowhere near pegged it yet. I was thinking I'd have to upgrade it before this competition, but it's doing well, doing great.
Is Jared okay?
Yeah, I would love to know what that script actually is doing, because it looks like maybe not anything useful.
Every time I switch to it,
He switches back.
A script like that that Tyler wrote.
Ooh, go to Shane's
Picked a
screen.
random student in the classroom.
So it looks like Shane has discovered that he can log into the SQL server remotely. Oh, and it looks like a few others did as well. Jared obviously found it. Mason found it. And they have created users for themselves. So he is catting some data out there. That's a lot of data.
That's a big table.
So the SQL server by itself is probably not going to give you a shell, but this would allow you to read some files off of the file system and start poking around just with what's on the box. Interested to see what they'll find. Okay, so he's trying to log in as the backup user. And he knows that the password for the backup user is backup. And he was able to log in, and that is not a valid SQL command. Nothing good. Well, yeah, not really. That'll give you file access if he didn't already have it, but he already had it, so he already had what he needed there. Are we stalled? Do we give him a hint?
So what has he found that he's looking at?
So he's got his shell open on the right. He's executing commands through the web shell. And on the left-hand side, that looks like some nmap output. So what is Logan doing?
So Logan is also using a netcat shell, which is continuing to die, which surprisingly nobody has found the cron job yet.
I'm tempted to just disable that. I don't want them frustrated at dead netcat
Especially
shells.
we have multiple people going after the same thing right now. That
I think
output.
you can disable it, but you have to tell them.
Yep. So I'm just going to go ahead and disable that cron tab rule. I feel like they've been sufficiently frustrated by it. So that is no longer in effect. I'm just going to jump over there to that room and let them know that that's been disabled.
Oh, I can do that from here.
Oh, perfect. Just send them a message through the thing. Yeah, so I feel like that was funny and maybe realistic to the real world, but not very CTF-y.
That's fine.
What do you think, Sean?
I like it.
Cody, you want to pull up my screen?
So Tyler's going to let them know that we have disabled that cron job. And we'll explain that after. Or they'll watch the stream after and
He's gone.
see what happens.
Oh, there it is.
The other trick we'll see if they So that's basically what shows up on their screen too. If they have if they have the CTF open at all on any page, whether it's the challenges or not. So they'll see it, or if they go look at the notifications.
So does anyone have points yet? We haven't even been looking at the scoreboard. Let's just take a glance.
Look at that.
Right, it's just
All
same,
those points.
Same thing. It's 2 users stuck at www data, and nobody else getting any access.
So nobody has gotten a single valid user other than www data. So in the interest of time and progress, I'm going to poke my head in there, and I'm just going to let them know. I'm just going to say the words top 10 passwords, and we'll see what happens after that. So I will be right back and look forward to what we're about to see.
Yes, now we're gonna have to keep attention on everyone's screen to see who switches to do something else. Who drops their their thing first.
Trying to grab someone else's shell.
Password list immediately.
That is hilarious. Did you hear that?
No.
Okay, I just got some great information from somebody who was paying closer attention than I. Earlier when we saw Jared just running that Python script that was erroring out connecting to all of those other ports, those are common ports that somebody who got a bind shell on the box would use, like 4444, 3333, and he was trying to catch one of their bind shells if somebody else got a shell on the box.
He was literally just trying to steal.
There's a lot of cheese there, but that is a really, really cool, that's really, really cool. So I think at least one, maybe two of those passwords should be valid. Andrews.
The real question is, does Jerbear know who to go and send this against? Is he gonna try the Unix users default list?
That's a good point. The
'Cause that's not
Unix
gonna
users
help
default
him.
list will not work. You really need the users on the box. So if he doesn't already, okay, username enumeration.
I don't think it's gonna work with this version of SSH though. So
It's not, and that's slow. That method is very slow anyway.
Wanted to give a.
Oh, good. Okay, go to Logan's screen. So Logan has a tool called IDA Pro open here, and you can see up in the top toolbar he has a program called Sue open. There was a custom executable called Sue in the opt directory, and he has identified that, and there is a vulnerability there that allows for a buffer overflow. There's one or two little checks that he's going to have to bypass, and it does have some protections enabled. So I would expect that he and probably Jared have the ability to get that thing done pretty quickly if they look close. We'll see. So he's
now with the hand he switched again. As I said, it's interesting to see
Oh, man.
who's gonna drop what they were doing, whether they're on in a rabbit hole or on the right path or not.
They did comment that they thought you giving him the hint was its own red herring.
and that may very, very well be.
Well, I shared with them it wasn't.
So
Like,
Shane has searched
Definitely
buffer
wasn't.
overflow C. Good. So Shane is in the opt tools directory in the top right there. He has also found the Sue program, which is set user ID root. If he reads the source code carefully there, I wish we could pause the screen, but essentially it reads characters in until the user hits enter. The buffer it's reading them into is 256 bytes, and it looks like there's a check to only allow 256 bytes. But instead of adding 1 to the count for each character, it adds the actual value of the character. So if you were to send 256 null bytes, their value is all 0, and the length counter would not get incremented even though the buffer gets filled, and then you can overwrite data after it on the stack. It does have position-independent execution enabled, so you'll need to do a partial overwrite, but there is just a function called shell, which drops a shell. What did he find there? What did I miss?
Look at his notes.
I wish I didn't socket pwn. This will be a great one to look back on in a week or two, or maybe a month or two when we have a club meeting, and just discuss how this one should be solved, because, yeah, he's clearly, he's on the right track. He's thinking hard about it. So he had his mouse over the vulnerability there. You see where it says length plus equals temp? What that should be is length plus plus. And so instead of adding to the length, we're adding the value of the character to the length, and a null byte will add 0 while also putting something in the buffer. Excellent.
This is what, like we talked about earlier, is seeing where the strengths come out, right? We talked about Corbin being kind of a web guy. We know Jerbear and LMS are, they're more into Pwn. So if they find the right things, I think they can move along very quickly in the competition. But Logan has stumbled upon him, but Jerbear hasn't gotten access to even start seeing that.
Oh, good. So let's go over to Jerbear's screen real quick. Jerbear is using a tool called Hydra to try to do some password brute forcing. Unfortunately, he's not using a valid username, so that's going to be a fruitless effort until he gets a valid list of users. But this is a great tool for doing SSH brute forcing if you have a valid list of users. Backup is a MySQL user, not a Linux system user. If he just found the web shell or something, he would have it. Cody, do you see any other screens that looks like they're doing password brute forcing? Because as soon as they have the valid list of users and they try the top 10 passwords, I would guess within 2 to 3 minutes they'll have an SSH shell. And that'll be a lot easier to work with. I see a web shell on Shane's screen. Darkrain is looking at the
Can we
web
pop over to
chest.
Logan real quick?
Yeah, good idea.
So Logan's digging in deeper into the Sioux binary.
Yes, so Logan is using GDB with a tool called, that's either PETA or more likely it's PwnDebug, also sometimes pronounced Pound Bag. Oh, did he find the Etsy shadow? What did he find here? He is catting his own Etsy shadow file. I'm not sure what he's going for there. So he catted his own Etsy shadow file. If anybody on the stream wants to type in all of those characters and throw it through John, you could get Logan's root password there. So he found there's some backup files, but he hasn't found the backup file in var backup, which contains all of the password hashes.
Right, and again, we said that
files.
that would be a valid path to start moving around because some of those are going to be pretty easily guessable with a list like Rocky, something like that. One of the basic lists.
Yep. So I'm surprised that he's not spending more time on the buffer overflow there, because clearly having a custom C program that is set user ID root on the system that's going to be a path to root. That's non-default. And that is kind of his strong suit there, is software exploitation, buffer overflows. So I'm hoping he'll do more of that. It looks like what he's trying to do is get a list of the home directories, and I'm not certain why. I'm gonna poke my head down here.
He's getting a user list, so he may start going after the same thing that we saw Jailbreak go after, except for Logan actually has the right information to do that. Right, so now if we see Logan take this back from his own machine and throw it through Hydra, just like Jerbear was doing, with the exact same command, except for change the lowercase L to an uppercase L and then point it to a file, we'd see Logan get some different shells, which could open up some possibilities for him too.
So while he's doing that, let's go back to Spicy's screen, if you would. And it looks like, I thought I saw SSH there. Yeah, so he tried to SSH as the user Jeremy. I'm not certain if that's one that you can actually get. I don't think Jeremy is actually hackable, but he has the right idea, SSHing in with those user accounts that he found from the web directory. Did he type please? So that's 2 now. I should, for the next competition, we should make that a valid command. If they type PLS or PLZ, that would be fantastic.
Automatic disconnect. 5-minute ban. Let's start doing ban hammers.
Uh-oh. Something bad happened. Cody, as you're watching the screens, if you see any password brute forcing, do switch over to it.
Got a couple more.
So Spicy's back on the web directory.
Yeah, so I'm pulling up to our user list, and
Good.
Jeremy's definitely not in the ones that matter.
So I think there are 12 or 14 users that really matter, that if they can move to root through. That would be Zane, Janessa, Nico, Skylar, and the list is gone there. Majok, Kayla, Ali, Javier, Aaron, Braxton, Myron, or Mark.
And I noticed Aaron's not actually a user on the machine.
Oh, really? Did I misspell it?
I mean,
Should
he's not in this list that we have here.
Interesting.
So-
That could be a mistake on my part, but it shouldn't keep them from root.
Not a big deal. Just
So it looks like CDL's doing some source code review here. He is going to come out of this with probably 25 new CVEs in web chess. So
who's going to issue those CVEs for him? Though?
if you're watching this stream now, you're going to want to go ahead and pull CVEs for your web chess vulnerabilities, because within 45 minutes, somebody else will have all of them.
You should go look at how many web chess installs there are.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Something to do.
Check online. It's a very old application.
That makes it very good.
So I'm guessing none. What we're looking here is if anybody is actually running web chess online, and I think it's probably 0 of them, but we'll use some Google Dorks, some Google Foo to try and figure it out.
If you can find that and pull me a link from somewhere.
Oh, okay. Shane just wrote down that he found the world writable LD config. He is definitely on the right path here. This is a valid path to root. He would just need to overwrite a few things in that file, and he should be able to get a set user ID binary to load his own shell. Yep, yeah, we see, man. That's the right thing. At the bottom, yep, that's the right thing as well. There you go. Good.
Is he listening to you or what?
It's almost as if he is. So he highlighted both the LD
Should be enough
config
delay, it wouldn't be in real time like that.
and the opt tools SU. Easily exploitable binary if I was God. Yeah, that's true.
So
That
the
is
other thing
so
we got,
true.
we do have a chat room that they're all in that we can see too, and we do have one of them said we're falling into insanity in here, so they're definitely all, or many of them are. Here they gig.
So another thing that I could do if we want to really speed up this competition is I could let them know that there is a file in var backup that has the etc directory. That would give them the password hashes to all of the users, which they could then crack and get a lot more user accounts. So I'm going to give it another 5 or 6 minutes here, but if nobody else finds anything good, then we'll give them the ability to crack those hashes and get into more user accounts. So it looks like Jerbear has been rickrolled again. If there were points for getting rickrolled, he would be winning.
So from the other room, we do have some hint sharing going on between
Ah.
the competitors, which some of the other competitors promptly shut down. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what was all shared between who, but there's something. So we may see some more get some basic access or the www data access again here shortly.
That's all right. This is a competition where the vulnerabilities are made up and the points don't matter. So if the hints get shared, then the hints get shared. So yeah, we'll give them a few more minutes and then I might go recommend that they check in the var backup directory, which will give them a bunch of user
Right.
shells.
So we did say 2 hours, and we're at like an hour and almost 20 or an hour and 15 minutes. So
We'll go for about an hour and a half. We're at an hour 23 right now. We'll give them another 7 minutes and then we'll see if we can give them another way in. I figure
Chris was right there too.
What did he have?
He was looking at the
I was checking.
PHP page. Not the about, but the regular one. So if he could get over to the other one where the web shell is sitting, he was right on the cusp. He should like make that logical connection to jump over to that other one or try that other one.
Yep. Yeah, Chris is definitely close there.
Andrew, what percentage of progress are each of them at right now?
I would say that those that have the web shell are at least 50% of the way to root, if not more. My intentions were for them to use no solves yet.
No solves yet on the
Well,
scoreboard.
that's kind of like a 0 or 100% complete thing.
Yeah. My intentions were for them to use some of the many vulnerabilities that would give them access to the user list, to then take that user list, try some password brute forcing, and then from there they can go to root using one of several different techniques. So I would say anyone that has a shell, at least some sort of shell, is at least halfway there, if not more, based on what they've found. If they don't yet have a shell on the machine, and it looks like maybe, there's their public IP if you want to hack them. Actually, that's Eric's public IP. If they don't have a shell, then they're a little further behind. So yeah, 50%-ish.
So as of right now, we have 3 people still looking at the chess game, right? So Chris,
Yeah.
Darkrain, Spicy, and I think Jerbear were all looking at that. So still not making any progress there. I'm surprised that we haven't seen them switch away from that to something else, just because of how long they've been sitting there. And that's one of the things of how long do you actually work on something before you change gears in a timed competition, right?
So, Cody, what's LMS doing? Is he doing more software exploitation? What's he got going on? So it looks like he's got a shell. He has discovered that the apps group allows apt install, and there are 3 users in the apps group. Let's see, what else did he discover? So there's a newer sudo exploit, but that is not relevant here.
Oh, so that Python root.py looks like he had set up correctly with the user list and the top 10.
So hopefully he'll have at least an SSH shell pretty quick. He also discovered that links is set user ID for a certain user. And that is going to be, I believe, the Janessa user.
Oh, for the links is Skylar.
Skylar, excuse me.
Skylar
Yes.
is who they're looking for there. I can't see behind his lower third there his name to.
So it
see-
looks like he's trying to get a password for the Skylar user.
So want to see.
And what is he doing?
Well, now he's switching.
Top 10.
Looking for
Let's
different
just
stuff.
let's check and see what Skylar's password actually is. Skylar's password is password, but the A is a 4 and the O is a 0. So a slight variation on just the word password would get that account, and then of course links is an easy path to root if you can. What do we have in the chat here?
So more struggling sending chat to each other, which you can actually see on the screen because they have it up too.
What does lub mean?
I don't know.
Some hacker terminology clearly I'm not aware of.
Logan doesn't want any of that sharing going on because he is definitely one of the ones that has somewhat of a lead. So this is the code we were looking at. Like,
he has 2 arrays, one of usernames and one of passwords, and I will say for a fact there is a valid combination within that.
and now he's looking specifically for Skylar.
Yep, none of those are passwords for Skylar, but I believe which users would he get? The Braxton user is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Aaron's password is just Aaron, and that's probably, so there's probably 2 within one within the top 10 and one that has their own username as their password.
So a gaming thing here, right? Gaming CCFs is definitely a thing of how to play and how to do things very quickly. Sometimes going the longer, less cool way is sometimes faster.
Mm-hmm.
So he's writing his own code to actually do this, which in my opinion is a little bit longer than what I would have done. So I would have done kind of what we saw some of the other people do is get out Hydra, because all you have to do for that is have your one-liner for Hydra, and you set your lists. You set your 2 lists, and you do TAC L for users and TAC P for password lists, and then you say go. Right, so especially because something like that is a tool designed to do that instead of using Python Pwn tools library, which isn't really designed. It's not a brute forcing thing. So the other thing is this isn't going to be multi-threaded. So even if he does expand his list, it's not going to be any faster for him, right?
So what is he doing connecting on port 45, 45, 45? Because that is not even a valid port. That is above.
So from what I saw in his code, it looked like he was trying to hit his netcat shell and then SU as that user and then enter the password.
Huh.
So again, instead of going a route that I would have gone of trying to hit the SSH, right? Because he's seen Etsy password at this point, so he knows what shells they can log in is. They're not set to no login. They're set to bin bash, or I think they're all set to bin bash. So that's definitely different.
Got a PBS by the
Oh,
same
that's
name.
a podcast.
This is
My
a specific
apologies.
accident at a silo.
My phone is playing things randomly, as phones sometimes do. So it is now 7:29. In 1 more minute, I'm going to go recommend that they check the var backup directory. That will contain a backup of the Etsy directory, which of course has the shadow file in it. That will give them password hashes, which should be pretty trivially crackable once they have the hash. It's a lot faster to crack the password hashes than it is to try and brute force them, just over the network. So I think I'm going to go recommend that to them. Anyone strongly opposed?
So while you do that, it's going to be interesting to see what we see next. There are a couple people who know the links route. They've specifically targeted that user. So if they start going after that one specifically, they're going to be going the links route and abandoning, like Logan will continue to abandon his overflow that he looked at and kind of dug into.
That is true. So yeah, now once they know which users should be able to gain root. Oh, did somebody get it? Oh, what do we have here? This is not one of the intended paths to root. Super Tux Cart. Dark Rain is going to challenge.
I think we may have frustrated one or two of them.
It looks like he's playing as Beastie, the BSD demon.
We can switch over to the other competitors and come back to see if he can actually win a race.
Definitely.
Then at least he can win something tonight instead of. And we've got CDL just watching YouTube videos.
Yeah. What's Spicy got going on there?
AFK, faster break.
Looks like Spicy is doing something with MySQL.
I'm not sure what tool I'll put that is. That might be SQL now.
Oh, that's the help page for MySQL. So
Okay.
probably he's found the username and password to MySQL, and he is trying to get connected there. So what he needs is a TAC U for username, and TAC P should help him out. So I'm going to hop over into the other room, and I'm just going to recommend the var backup directory, and I think that should lead to a root tree.
I think maybe with that bit of advice, Dark Rain over there will maybe switch back from his race. I can hear him shouting back and forth from here. Hop into Shane's real quick. Let's see what he's doing, Cody. He's one of the few that actually has stuff on his screen that it's new. Right? Has Andrew says top 10 passwords for what?
Okay,
When
the
he's
hint has
seen-
been given. So we have somebody with a shell. Shane has a shell. He's checking in var backup, and what he should see is there's one called etsy.tgz. That is not a standard backup file. It is also world readable. And
There's nothing that really makes that stand out though, so I don't know if he's gonna
That's
figure
true.
that out. Right? It is a little bit bigger in size. It's not normal, but I'm guessing most of them.
oh
won't
yeah,
know.
here we go. Okay, so
Okay.
Shane has figured out there is something called Etsy backup. He cannot just ungzip it though because he doesn't have write access. So he'll need to like download it first. There's nothing good in here. Andrew, please. There is definitely something good in there, but we're not going to give any more hints other than that. So Cody, do you want to just kind of go around through the different screens real quick and let's see if anybody else is checking the var backups folder. Not readable. Yeah, it should be readable.
It was definitely
Let me just
RRR.
verify real quick that is readable.
I can still see it from the delayed stream. It's definitely
It is
RRR.
definitely readable. Yeah, it's readable. So let's go around. He's correct. There's a buffer overflow. Cat localhost.
Now he's going backwards.
Okay, yeah, that's. Let's go to a different screen. Let's see if anybody else is checking var backups there.
I don't think anyone else is.
No one else is? Somebody got hashes. What do we have going on here? Somebody got some password hashes. Looks
And
like
var
Logan got
backups.
password hashes. Looks like Logan is downloading. He downloaded the Etsy TarGZ, and you can't quite see it on the screen, but he is extracting that. And I would expect pretty soon he will find password hashes there. Error is not recoverable. That is because he is doing it incorrectly. If he checked the man page, so he's going to need to add that'll do it. So he needs to unzip the file, but that's not going to work either. Not quite. What on earth happened there? Let me just verify that is the correct thing.
It was a lot bigger when we saw the file size.
Var backup. So I'm just verifying that it is or should work in the way that I think it should. Cannot open no such file or directory. What did I do wrong here? Yeah, that is definitely.
It looks like he's got
That's
it now,
fine.
though.
He
So
must just be doing it wrong. So he extracted the Etsy directory. So he's going to try and crack the root hash. That is not going to be fruitful. But there are lots of other users that would be good to target there. Opt tools. So he's checking the source code. That is the binary, not the source
so
code.
now he's been flipping back and forth between like something else. So either the SSH and now this, back and forth to that binary a couple times. But I think he just needs to stay in one of these paths.
Yep. So he has a password hash there. There should be a bunch more of them though. So I don't know if he is looking at his own shadow file somehow. Nope, that's the right one. Good. So all of those password hashes are non-standard. Usually they'll have like a $6 in front of them, which would be a bcrypt hash. He's going back for the pwn. Usually they'd have a $6 and be a very long hash. That would be a bcrypt hash, and those are really slow to crack. I'm using older passwords though, which I believe are in triple des format, and they are much, much faster to crack. So now with all of those password hashes, Well, that's not helpful. Not quite sure what's going on there. Give it a
I think
minute.
you gotta try to open one of the files.
Yep.
But again, he is the one that's actually paying attention to time management stuff and switching and trying new things as we go on, which has actually gotten to the point where it's hurting him and not helping him, as compared to some of the other folks we have here have definitely needed to switch away from what they spent a lot of time on.
Yeah, let's scroll back through the rest of the screens. Is there anyone else that's finding other interesting things now that we've provided some hints?
Go to Chris. Let's go to
What does Chris have? Chris currently has a Rickroll, but it looks like he's also...
No, he was just on the
He found the
PH.
shell?
He didn't find the shell. He didn't scroll far enough.
Ah, okay.
He was scrolling down. I saw him scroll about halfway down the page.
Yeah, so Chris found the testing.php script, but just at a quick glance, it looks like just a PHP info. It's not obvious that it's a shell unless you scroll to the bottom or curl it so that you can see that. So it looks like he's poking through the source code here. Won't find anything on that page, but that's an excellent technique. That's a really good idea if he was looking at the testing.php script, if he was looking at the other one. How are we doing on time?
So we were an hour and a half in.
Okay.
We still have somebody looking at web chess.
CDL is not going to have root, but he is going to have 40 CVEs in web chess. He is going to crush that
Who's
application.
going to issue those CVEs though?
I have found one other online instance of web chat.
One?
One.
We should probably warn that user. I wonder if that's one of my old, stale, moldy boxes from a year or two ago.
AWS.
Huh, interesting.
So basically,
We
what's
should
gonna
probably warn that one user before we drop some CVEs.
yeah send an email to Andrew saying to update his web.
So Shane is logged into MySQL again. It looks like he's searching for data there. Yeah, that's not gonna get him there. But it is a good thought. So he's got some great notes. Okay, so we're back on Logan's screen now. And he's looking at the root hash. What does he have on the right-hand side there? He tried to enter a password. Yeah, wrong password. So hopefully he can find some of the other password hashes soon. Try some of those.
He looked right. I mean, he's looking right at him, right? Just right.
Yep. So I would hope it's obvious that, or to him at least, that the root password hash is not the way to go. It's not quite that easy. He needs to get one of the other users first. But if he threw those in John and tried to crack them, he would probably get a shell.
So with that older format, would he still need to unshadow those files?
He
Or
would
unshadow
not.
those
He can
hashes?
just throw it right into John and it should work. Yep.
I'd be
Okay.
curious if this works for.
So Jerbear is getting himself a shell here. It looks like he's trying to do a bind shell though, and the firewall is going to prevent that from happening. So he needs to try some sort of reverse shell instead. All outbound connections are allowed from this machine. So if he just opens up a port on any internet connected accessible device, he should be able to get a reverse shell pretty quick. PHP to do. Oh yeah, capitalization. What are you going for here? PHP injection enum. So if that is a valid injection point, then that is not one that I knew about, but that's really cool. If they found something there. I'm not quite sure. Boy, I really thought someone would have it now. So Logan, it looks like he is targeting the Skylar user. He has found the password hash, and he is he's just typing the password hash in for the password.
I definitely don't think he's figured out that those are hashes and not passwords yet.
Yeah, so those are hashes. Those are not passwords. Like I said, I believe they're triple des. Don't quote me on that, but it's an older format. Oh, so he got John. Perfect. Okay, that's a valid... Yes! Okay, so Logan has a valid user account now. He cracked the Javier user, and I would imagine that now he will close this web shell and log in as Javier and get himself a proper SSH shell.
Or he's just going to go for gold and actually try to crack all of the hashes and get as many as he can, which he should get. Did he not open that
So he's trying to execute netcat listening on port 4444.
Is he still running it? Is Jared still running this thing?
Not sure.
I doubt it.
So Logan also got the Braxton user, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let me consult my notes and just see what that will give you. So that will give you some flags, it'll give him some points, but those 2 users alone are not quite enough. Applying some rules to that with Hashcat rather than John would be hyper effective.
We're at the scoreboard.
Oh, good. So we got some points. Somebody got some points on the board. Let's flip back over to our scoreboard real quick there.
So on that point though, you can still do those types of things with John. It's just a little bit different, and it's not as common. You don't see people doing it. Just all it takes is to know what rule set you're looking for. So personally, I tried the elite rule set because if we're developing like gaming the system, if someone's going to put something in there, it's probably going to be elite. If it's going to be crackable, and all that is just tac rules equals L33T in John, anyways.
Yeah, so he's attempting the pseudo exploit from, what was it, about a month ago or so?
Yeah, a couple weeks.
Where you could put a -1 in and it would underflow down to a different value, I believe. That's not going to be a valid path to root here, but that was a cool exploit from about a month ago. So he is logged in as the Javier user. He's going to try and switch to the Braxton user. This will at least get him a flag, but Braxton doesn't have a direct path to root. He's going to want to try one of the other users that he found in the sudoers file.
So the other thing that's actually surprising me with what he just did is he ran it with the default list from John, which is actually going to be shorter than RockU.
Yep, not as effective.
Right, and we know that the RockU list is actually going to get a couple more of those passwords that didn't show up there, or at least I think we believe it.
Yes.
Should.
So if they were to try a more effective password list, they would probably be getting more passwords. He got 2 of them. I would expect at least 4 or 5. A few of the passwords are also only 4 characters. So if they were to just try some very basic 4-character passwords, they would get those as well.
Or just like a basic brute force will actually get through 4-character passwords pretty quickly.
Yeah, darn near instant.
Even on laptops, right? Even on this hardware.
Yep. Tempted to go give more hints. We got 15 minutes left. Should we go around to the different screens again? Let's see what... we haven't looked at Spicy's screen in a while. CDL, Dark Rain. So it looks like Spicy is doing some Googling here. He's checking out a CVE for... GNU Chess. So GNU Chess is a cool command line application for playing chess. That is not actually installed on this machine, but it is a good one, and apparently there's a high CVSS score for that. I can't imagine how you would rate GNU Chess with a CVSS score 7.
Yeah, I don't know how, especially once you start to add in environmental and temporal scores into that.
Yeah,
other than just having the base.
Doesn't seem likely. Looks like CDL is doing some SQL injection, and it looks like the RDO theme variable there. So he's definitely finding valid vulnerabilities. They're just not quite going to lead to anything in that web application.
Cody, if you want to flip to my screen actually pretty quickly here.
Yeah, go ahead and flip over to Tyler's.
We can show a little bit of a demo of this. Right, we look at the different lengths of different lists, right? We have I did WCTAC-L for lines. The password list that he was trying before is only 3,500-ish passwords, whereas we see like the 1.4 million in RockU. Whereas what we're talking about of like some of those are going to get going to catch more accounts, right? And even with again consumer hardware, right, our laptops, it's going to rip through that list pretty quickly. It's not going to take that long to figure out.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that a password like password with a 4 and a 0 would be that difficult to crack. RockU should get that really quick. A few of the other passwords are DSU !, which is not one you would just think of, but if you do some very basic password cracking, that should fall out.
What would you say that was? Is that
with a lowercase p. So this one Tyler's trying right now, that is a valid password, and right up at the top there, we can see that the RockU list does have that. So if they were to try with RockU, or probably any other common password word list, that should fall out pretty quick. Cody, let's go back over to, let's see what Shane's doing. So Shane is logged in as Javier. Looks like he was also able to crack that password. Nope, I lied. He's still data. He's in Javier's home directory. He was trying to switch to the Daniel user with a password of ABC13. I don't think that's a valid password. I'm not sure where he got that, but he is on the right track. Try another users. The firewall is going to prevent that shell from working. How about Logan? What is Logan working on?
The other thing with that is since you don't allow binds, who is trying to hijack shells won't work either.
Wouldn't work. Yep.
Even though that was, I didn't see what port he was using.
So it looks like Logan has the Rocku list now that we were talking about. That is a popular password cracking list, and he is. It's interesting. He's bouncing back and forth between two good methods. So he has the Rocku list, which will give him the user accounts that then will give him sudo access. But he's also interested in this binary, and hopefully he sees the vulnerability. See, it's trying to figure out, you're right, that's where it is. So it's trying to keep the user from typing too many characters, but it's calculating that length incorrectly. So if he does not solve that one during the competition here, that'll be a fun one for clubs later. He's going to attempt it. So he's stepping through the binary. He's got the source code, so it should be a pretty easy deal. Not sure if he's going to get that one in 15 minutes. Man, no roots. We're 10 minutes from the end, and there's no roots left.
We were really worried about people just ending it really quickly.
Yeah, I thought this would go pretty quick. Well, if we get another 5 minutes in, I can go provide another hint, but I'm not quite sure what other hints we can provide.
I mean, even if we're the hints you've been giving is just for user access, and I don't think that it's not going to be enough to get them through because there aren't any really easy privilege escalations to root. They are all fairly difficult.
Right, so let's list those off again. The privilege escalations to root. For those that have valid shells, here are the ways that they could get root. The stack buffer overflow. There are at least 2 in the room that have the skills for that, probably more if they think about it a little. The Skylar user, of course, can run user bin links as root, and that would allow you to use the -editor trick to get root. The etc ld.so.conf file, like the ld config thing that Shane was looking at earlier, would give root. And there are 3 users, Majok, Kayla, and Ale, that are in the apps group, which can install things as root. So if they were to get passwords for any of those 3 users, actually any of the 4 users, because Skylar as well would give root, that would do it. So Skylar's password is, of course, password with a 4 and a 0. Majok, Kayla, and Ale's passwords are variations of fall 2019, winter 19, November 2019. So if they were to try any of those common password spraying passwords, they would find a way to root. Oh man, we have some frustration there.
Switch over to Logan real quick. It looks like he maybe switched back to what he was doing before.
So it looks like, is he password cracking?
Yep, so he is using user share, wordless, Rocku.txt like I just showed. And it's going to take a little bit longer than that last password list, but there still should be something that comes out of this that will get him to another spot on the machine. I'm also surprised, is he actually SSH'd in with the creds that he has?
He is not. So he has valid credentials, but he's still using the web shell when he did, which is a surprise to me.
Yeah.
SSH would be a more comfy shell to use.
Especially at his point where you could, was Etsy Shadow readable to them at this point?
Etsy Shadow is, yeah.
Right, so he should know, and Etsy Password, he should know who can log in, so you can check the credentials that you have against what shell they're allowed to log in with. So at that point, you can kind of make the logical deduction that all of a sudden we can jump to an SSH shell over web shell.
And it looks like, so he might need to do a little bit of modification. I think what's happening here with John is recognizing that the first password hash for root is in one format, and it's attempting to use that format for all of the rest of the hashes. So if he just catted out those individual hashes without the root one, John might work a little better. I hadn't anticipated that contingency.
And now he's actually switched. He killed what he had running before and just running a straight brute force attack on it. So like we said before, it shouldn't really take that long for him to get the 4 character ones unless I don't know.
They are upper, alpha, and a symbol, but still 4 characters shouldn't take terribly long.
But it depends on where John starts by default.
That is true.
Right? If it doesn't start at 4 characters, if it starts at 8, right, it might not even show up. So he might still miss that.
Man, 10 minutes, no roots. Lots of shells, no roots. Did we make it too hard, Tyler?
I thought someone would have got it.
What do you see there, Cody?
Yep. So what we said had a viewer say, Logan is using the right word list. However, John auto detected the SHA-512 crypt for root and is using that hash type and not the triple des for the rest of the users. So
Yeah,
just
that
like you
is
said.
that's interesting. I would not have anticipated that. So if he just copied out those users without the root at the top, it would probably crack them pretty much instantly. But John is making a mistake there.
And it's interesting though in the John output, if he flips back to that, it does say triple des until like when it starts talking about the hashes in one of the first lines of output. So it looks like it is identifying it, but not actually giving him the output that he wants.
Yep. Interesting.
Again, flipping back and forth, doing different things.
So let's go scroll through the screens again. What else do we have going on? So we are looking now at, let's look at that dark green screen. Looks like he's doing some derb again. So he is brute forcing the git directory. Directory listing is enabled though, so he should be able just to recursively wget that directory.
And
He
actually,
should
I'm
not
surprised
need to brute force it.
Usually Derb will check for that, and it'll say, I'm sure we'll see it as soon as it finds one of the first ones, to say not going to list the output because it's listable.
Yep, but it should find that. Yeah, so there it is. He doesn't really need to brute force there because it is all readable. So that, of course, gets you access to everything in the web directory, which should show you where the web shell is, which should get you a shell on the box. Interesting. Looks like CDL, he is working hard on the PHP application. Shane, let's go back to, so Shane is, what does Shane have going on? Shane is trying passwords for the Skylar user. Tiger is not the right password or the right spelling.
No, he's got a list down the lower right.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere he's pulled, which is
So he might be trying like top 10 passwords.
He's been trying this for a while.
Man, SSH brute force, that would probably still work. So if Shane looked in the var backup directory, which he looked in earlier, but he just missed the etc targz, he would have the password hash for this user. He knows what user to target. He has an idea of how to do it, but the passwords he's using are not going to be effective there. Having that password hash would be much better.
one comment from the YouTube is just a RMRF / at the end of the competition to see what they do.
You know, if I had a backup of it, I would definitely do that. I don't want to because it might be useful for learning purposes to use this box later.
Right.
But yes, that would be hilarious.
It would be interesting if they're starting to look in the directories they were looking in before, and all of a sudden it was just not found, right?
Yep.
As they were working through.
And it disappears. Anything else from the YouTube?
So we have Shane going a different approach, actually using an NSE script from the Nmap scripting. And so those of you who've just seen Nmap before, basically there's ways to run extra scripts. They're built in, or they come with the default package of Nmap. One of them being SSH brute force. So looks like he's going to go after, I don't know if that's going to work with that user, but he's got the right idea of using the RockU list. Although again, we've talked about this over the network. An SSH brute force is going to be slow.
Oh, and Nmap seg faulted.
And Nmap.
Ouch. So Nmap must have a bug in it. Nmap crashed.
Yeah, every once in a while you get seg faults with certain things.
That is an excellent point, though. So the user he's targeting is awesome. That will get him root. The password word list he's using is awesome. That will get him the password, but it's not going to be fast enough over the network. He really needs to try that against the password hash, which we hinted at about 30 minutes ago. But he doesn't have it. So he is going back to var. Maybe he's going to check out backups again, I would hope. Fingers crossed. Hold your breath.
Oh, we missed out on something. Logan found another user.
Oh, really? Let's go over to Logan's screen. What did Logan find there? So he has Javier.
So, must have missed.
What else did you get? Anyone catch it?
I will find it in just a second. Braxton, he actually went into that account and got that
Okay.
because he had the credentials for it, just moved over to get it.
So he's trying the Linux enumeration again. So he found the sudoers file. There's lots of juicy stuff in there. Man, they have there's several people that are on the right path.
So I think between all of our competitors, right, I think they've identified 3 of our 4 ways to root. I haven't seen anybody quite look at apt yet, right? That was the other way we...
They had it up on their screen. I haven't seen anybody try it. Yeah, so of those 4, what were the 4 ways to root? The stack-based buffer overflow, Logan identified that. It looks like Shane was probably on the right track too.
Shane saw it, but didn't think he had the skills to do it.
And then I think somebody else saw that one too. The Skylar user, we have several users that are, or several competitors that are trying for that user. The LDSO.conf, Shane was all over that. I haven't seen anyone else catch that yet. And then the 3 users in the apps group.
So the real question is, when we do this again, are any of them going to want to compete again to just get beat up for 2 hours over not being able to get in?
These guys.
So we actually have from the time we actually started, we have like 10 minutes left. So we have a few options of what we can do. Is we can end at the
How to take back your power when you feel defeated by life. Doing some blogging or some reading, from Medium. Looks like a good article. It's a 7-minute read. He doesn't have time for that. So I'm tempted to give them the password to some of the users that have sudo access. It'll still be a little bit of work to figure out how to abuse links or how to abuse apt install to get root. But considering that we only have 5 minutes, I am tempted to just give them all some passwords. So let's do this. I'm going to copy paste my password list and just dump it in Slack for them. Okay, so here we go. Where's the thing? Oh shoot, I had it up. Sorry guys, I gotta find their chat. Where was that?
Tell Jerry from that.
Well shoot, I don't see the chat that I had with everyone.
Send Tyler. Or me.
Ding, ding, ding. Oh, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to paste a bunch of usernames and passwords to them. Everybody cool with this? Here we go. They got 5 minutes. So I'm going to go yell at them to check Slack, and hopefully this will send somebody to...
Looks like one
CDL.
CDL.
CDL saw it?
Yeah.
Good.
and going back after he's still working on web chess, even though they're right.
I guess he's got more CVs than phone.
Okay, so they have passwords for all of those users now. This will give them SSH. It will not give them root directly, but if there's ones, think about what sort of exploits you can use against those sudoers binaries. So he's looking for some SSH keys. Something is wrong there. So
Surprised you didn't go in and input that flag.
Cody, we might want to hop around to a few different terminals here. Let's see what everybody else is doing. And now that they have the passwords.
Dark Green just saw it.
Oh, Dark Rain. Okay, so let's check Chris's screen there. Check Dark Rain. So he is logged in as Skylar. He's checking what Skylar is allowed to do. He sees, I hope, that Skylar can run Lynx as root, but now he needs to figure out how to abuse that, right? So Lynx is a text-based web browser. Okay, I got the flag.
Gotta get
10 points.
Gotta
Don't
get
leave
us
those
10
on the
points.
table.
Gotta get on the board. So I'm watching the scoreboard here, and Corbin CDL still hasn't put in the flag that he found for that user.
Doing worthless work because it has ended the biggest troll. So it is 8 o'clock right now. I'm tempted to let it run a couple more minutes because they all have passwords now and they're on the right track.
Yep.
Should we go another 5-10 minutes?
Yep. So we didn't actually start until about almost 10
That's
after.
true.
So
I'm going to tell them that we're all going to go 10 more minutes. We'll see if he works.
So Logan doing the same thing.
That's for a different user.
extended CTFD? If it matters.
No, I didn't. Good point. So we'll add some time onto the end time of this.
Okay, has there been any action since I left, Tyler?
I've been fixing, so the end time was still set. So I fixed the end time, so they should be able to input.
Oh, good. Okay. So is Jer-Bear entering some flags there, maybe? How to find files with set user ID. That's definitely a good trick. That's on the right path. Cool. So Shane is checking out the man page for links, and it looks like he has just discovered that he can read the Etsy shadow file. Of course, I think he just typed it wrong. So if he types file : //etc/shadow, not quite. That would have worked. That definitely works. I tested that and it works. He must have typed something wrong.
Yeah, I think he had a typo in there.
But he is on the right track. Yeah, so you can cat the Etsy shadow file with links. Of course, they already have that since they had the backup file. URL open. So he's looking for a way to get links to execute some of his own code. Dash editor is the way that I was doing it when I was testing, but I'm sure there are other ways as well. All he has to do is find some command line flag that will get links to do something useful for him. Dash editor is the easy way. Did I hear a question?
Is that going to be on a blog somewhere that he'll come across, or is
No,
that
not necessarily, but it was, I will say, when I was poking around the man page, it took about 10 or 20 seconds. Why you gotta be like this? I think if you just look through the man page and think critically about what each option is doing, it's just a matter of scrolling down to the right one. No, don't look for public exploits. You gotta do it yourself, buddy. So Spicy is logged in as Zane. What can Zane do? Let me flip back to my cheat sheet here. I think so. So Zane, his user also has an SSH key in the home directory that will allow him to log in as the Mark user, but I don't think you can go anywhere from there. That'll give you 2 flags, but it won't give you root. So it looks like from www data, he was exporting some command line variable. He has all the users. Cody, why don't you flip back and forth? Yeah, okay. Oh, did he? Whoa, hold up. Chris has just rooted it. Did we miss it? How did he do that? Okay, flip back to the YouTube stream. Are we in time? Chris has rooted it. I think Chris has just won.
No, I missed it too.
He is catting all of the flags. I think he has won here. I'm going to go politely recommend that he doesn't RM the box. But it looks like Dark Rain has won.
Tell him to go input the 1 flag. He's trying to get all of them. He just needs the 1. He's losing time. Somebody else could find the links exploit.
These tries. Is that what he needs? Just that
Yep.
one?
Okay, so he's going to enter some flags. He's going for the 100-pointer. There
Game
it
over.
is.
With 2
Cool.
minutes to spare. An hour 58 and 3 hints.
Yes.
Only user was the password.
So I would love to know now, maybe before we stop the stream, maybe we should bring them over here and just have him describe how he got root. Because I missed it. I hope it may not be on the stream, is it? Because it wasn't on the screen.
No.
So yeah, let's go ahead and have them all come over here. We'll have him just describe what he did. What is he doing there?
He's trying to get it to cat out all the flags.
Oh, and somebody got... just give him a minute to play around. He's trying to kill all of their shells, isn't he? Cool.
You should go boot him off the box.
Just kick them all out
Yeah.
right now?
Just go log in his root and
Do
kick
I
him off.
do it?
Yep, because he's just gonna try to.
Okay, I am going to kick them all off the box now, and then if someone would you post a message in Slack that tells them to come into the room here? Okay, they are all getting firewalled right now. He's going to be very frustrated that his shell stops working. What the heck, is his shell still working? Uh-oh.
Your firewall won't work for established sessions, will it?
That's true. It is related established.
Just go kill his process.
Session.
Just go kill the process.
Grep root.
So now we just have a speed competition. Who can kill who first?
See if I can kill my own.
I hate myself so much.
We had such high hopes,
Okay.
Corbin.
I am so pissed off.
Come on in, everyone. So the live stream is still running. Welcome back, competitors.
With 2 minutes to spare, Chris pulls off the route.
So,
I was lost for the whole goddamn
Oh, we know. We're very well aware of what you were doing.
anybody get root besides Chris? Okay, so Chris got it right at the end. Chris, if you would come up here, we still have the live stream running. I wonder if you would describe what you did, because we were on somebody else's screen. We flipped back. So we flipped back to your screen and saw you were root. So if you would just describe what you did to get root.
Yeah, so when I got in as Skylar, the first thing I ran was sudo-l, which is going to show everything that I have sudo access to as that user. And I logged in as Skylar, so conveniently Skylar had sudo access to bin links or whatever it was. It was like an editor that I'd never seen before, so I just looked up the documentation for it, and it let you drop into your default shell by just pressing exclamation point. So by running sudo links and then pressing exclamation point, I just got bin bash. So I just catted.
So we saw someone else try it. I don't remember who was on the screen. We saw, what was it? I think you tried to cat Etsy Shadow and it didn't work.
Yeah, and you can do a links download exploit that I found in some old article, but I should have pressed.
I tried exclamation point bin bash. Or like colon exclamation point bin bash like bin. That didn't work.
Okay, well, I think we're going to stop it there. I think we're going to stop the stream. Are there any questions from the audience before we stop? Do you want to check the YouTube comments too before we stop the stream? Pulse the tapes reboot.
What was the intended way?
There were several intended ways. So if you watch the stream later, you'll see this, but I'll describe them to you all now. There were several paths into the box. Obviously, the web shell was a good one. There were several users with weak passwords. And then, let's see, there were a few other ways into the box. Once you were in, there were 4 ways to root. One of them was the buffer overflow, which I believe Shane, Logan, and did anyone else see that in opt tools Sue?
I thought it was, I didn't look at the make file, but I thought it was just, I thought I had to do was copy from the shadow file.
It did appear that way, but that was not the correct solution. I will save that answer for another, maybe a club meeting or something. I think that would make a really great binary to discuss. But that would have given you root. The Skylar user, of course, had user bin links they could run with sudo. And I didn't even know that you could use exclamation point. That's cool. You taught me something. What I would have done, I checked the man page, and there was a -editor option, which you could then point to your own file and run that as root. So that gives root. Shane correctly identified that the LD config binary, in combination with the world writable LD files in the Etsy directory, would have given you root through a set user ID binary. And then there were 3 users in the apps group. Who saw that? Apps could run apt install as root.
Saw that.
Yep.
What were the users?
That would have been Majok, Kayla, and Ale. So they had weak passwords. Their passwords were all like winter 19, fall 2019, and November 2019 exclamation point. So Corbin put in a lot of good work on that web chest. We said you probably didn't get root from that, but you probably got like 50 CVEs. So those are all zeroed in.
Wrote my SQL, like try to steal files locally that way.
Yep, we saw some
Yes,
really
so
cool
we definitely
tricks
saw
there.
at least, I'd say there's probably at least 3 of you that we were like paying attention to every time we come back and do web chess for like the first hour of the competition. So we could, if Cody pulls up the other view of like 6 images for us, and but he's not paying attention to what I'm saying. Pull up that view. So when we see this and we see like 3 or 4 of you all looking at web chess for the first long, loud kind of just went the other way and started looking at what everyone else was doing. So web chess was mostly a red herring. I don't think there's anything.
Web chess, it had a ton of SQL injection in it, of course, so that will allow you probably like to cat the Etsy password file, which you can then use to brute force passwords. But I don't think there was any direct code execution path from web chess. I don't think.
There were no system calls in that.
Yeah.
Source code.
Yeah, no systems, no evals.
You can create a bunch of databases, that's about it. You can read files either, like your EVA. At least I could load file.
I'm assuming those passwords are MD5 also.
In the Etsy shadow file?
Yeah, because from what the source code that I could see said, or no, not Etsy Shadow, but for the MySQL stuff.
Those are the old, what are they, SHA-1? I think it's a double SHA-1 process. It's a MySQL hash. It's like their custom thing.
Yeah, it's its own thing. MySQL 4.1 or 5.
Look at all these unlocked
Yep.
videos.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, I think we're going to stop the stream there. That was almost exactly 2 hours, I think. Not too bad. Yeah, heck yeah. If you guys thought this was fun and valuable, we'll do it again sometime. We'll make maybe a better box. We'll take some feedback on what was fun or frustrating or good or bad, and we'll make something more fun next time.
We could also make it harder.
Make it harder.
Yes, please.
I don't know. Other than that, go have a wonderful holiday break. Good luck on finals.
And for you competitors, I don't know if this is actually going to be saved on the YouTube stream, but you can go. Should be saved up there, so you can go watch all the comments we made about you. And all the times we were watching you.
We love all of you.
Big your heads.
What other folks are working on?
Yeah. All right. Good job, everyone. Stream is dead.
Good night.